Welcome to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Scott from Never Too Serious Podcast, a podcast that always lands in the realm of serious.
It does. It's kind of ironic, don't you think?
Are you a political show now?
You know what? I'm trying not to be, but gosh dang it. That's what's going on. It's hard to pull away from politics because
it's everywhere.
I've
had four famous people on and I keep bringing up politics. I'm like, Robbie, stop it.
do you get kind of, other than your podcast, do you get sucked into the news and stuff?
Surprisingly, I don't really only do it for the show. Basically, is what happens is my trending on my show. I never checked my Twitter when I took the time off from the break and everything. I don't think we haven't talked since then.
No,
I took everything. Now the only thing I've kept the same was that I only post once on my social media, then I go off. Mostly I loom around Twitter, but it's just to message, or even now I'm starting to get into emailing, which I never really was happy with. But now I have my own email. I'm emailing people and doing that and booking guests and stuff, because a lot of people don't check Twitter messages, especially if you got a check mark. I think it throws you in another category of human being where you just feel like you're entitled.
Yeah, you're entitled. Yeah, to be honest, I try and stay off of social media as well. I think probably in the last month, I've probably spent less time posting and doing stuff. And it kind of drags you down a little bit. But I don't know about the direct messaging and stuff. I think you and one other person are really the only folks that I direct message on Twitter. But emails always buried.
I just tell people hey, don't feel bad if I don't message you back. It's not me ignoring you. It's just I just can't. I don't have the time, man. It's being on the device. I only have time for Dragon City and fun, stupid phone games. Our cable, I think our cable bill, my internet was out, I thought, because of the storm. Wasn't because of that. It was because we had an overpayment thing that we had to pay. And it was 200 something bucks. And the person I live with is just hey, we're going to cancel TV and all that. I'm like, I haven't turned my TV on in months. There's nothing good on. I watched Jackass on my phone, and even that was horrible to watch. The new Jackass, dude, talk about depressing. It's like watching a tennis player who's been retired 20 years try and play tennis again. And after they hit their first freaking swing, you're already this is going to be the best game of my entire life. I've been waiting 20 years for this. And then they hit the ball and their arm breaks because they're old. That's what it was like. It was literally taking the wind out of my sails, where I was I want to remember what they were, not this. This is a pull for money.
Seriously, every day I look in the mirror, I see more gray, and I'm thinking I'm becoming one of those people. You're still young.
Get a lawn chair.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's folks that keep dying, and it just reminds me. Bob Saget, passed away recently, and I grew up with Bob Saget, so it makes me feel old.
It's weird how people are tweeting articles about him now, because apparently he had a head injury, then went to sleep, and that's what happened. And then everyone's I don't know. Everyone I can't talk about it. That hurts me still. I only had 3 people I looked up to, and now all of them are passed. So it's all right, let's just find a new hill to die on.
Well, you know what? Life is short, so you got to enjoy it while you're here.
That's what they say until you reach the afterlife, and then you get to decide where you get to go. I like to think I walk around the plains of eternal existence and just kind of stare at people through their windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, since I don't know if that's actually going to happen, I got to enjoy what I got now.
Fair point.
Yeah.
What have you been focused on as of recent? It doesn't have to be involved in the show, but it can also be involved in the show. But if anything that's been on your mind, because I've been going off on rants and tangents before my guests could have a chance to really say what's on their mind. And it takes us down a weird loophole I don't want to necessarily go down just yet.
Actually, the show has been kind of on my mind a lot. We're just coming, out of winter break time, and There's a little bit of vacationing going on. So normally we would record a few shows like extra. That way we post once a week. We could take a weekend off. And now we've run out of those extra shows. And so we're like, it's like immediate. As soon as we record a show, we're posting the show and then we're planning for the next one. We're trying to get ahead of it now. But with that, what's in the news is kind of what we've been talking about because there's been, a lot going on in the news. But looking for different show topics and thinking, because you had mentioned, oh, you turn into a political podcast. I don't really want to be, but it kind of does feel that way. But we're looking at doing some other shows that are non-political. We've got upcoming show. We're going to talk about some scams. I don't know if you've ever been victim of any kind of scam, but they're pretty prevalent, and there's some famous ones that have you know come out, and that's kind of been a template for other
Bernie
people to
Madoff.
use. Yeah, yeah.
His
Well, I mean,
fucking
even
last name, man. Like
yeah.
I don't you don't hire anybody or trust them with your fucking money. It's like having a lawyer and it's like always guilty. It's like I'm not picking you, dude. Like just on the basis of your name. I'm sorry to be that guy who judges a book by his cover, but that's me.
Well, and like the original Ponzi scheme. There's been so many that have been built off of that original
You got to
scheme.
do the
So
Theranos chick.
what's that?
The lady who invented that company, Theranos,
I'm not
CRISPR.
familiar.
Is it CRISPR?
CRISPR. That's a
I would
DNA
pull it up, but
hacker.
I'm so scared with my internet right now. Like I feel like
Yeah.
even though you paid it back, they're like, we're not going to give you full access to your powers that you paid for. I'm like, what do you
hmm
mean, man? Like you're literally like when my modem went off, I was like, what do I do? Do I just I'm gonna type in Theranos chick. I
Yeah.
bet you it's
Side
gonna pop.
side note, I actually switched internet providers and got gig speeds now, so I'm pretty happy. My
Yeah, her
uploads.
name's Elizabeth Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Theranos scandal. I
Oh,
pulled this up on the show before.
oh, I'll have to look into that.
What? Okay,
Oh
my
no.
Zoom just popped up was like error, unable to connect to internet. I'm like, I'm on Google right now. Oh God, it's pop-ups.
Oh no.
All right, so here's a rule of thumb. When you're checking a website to know if it's like if it's got a bias or anything, which most of them do, just look at the ads. If it says like Joe Biden's going to hell because he's the devil, then it's probably a Republican website. I'm just fair tip for anybody out there that really I've just started to do that. I was like, wait, why is this saying that climate change isn't real? Oh, I guess it
You got
must
to be
be.
in incognito mode all the time. Otherwise, it just starts, especially like if you're doing any kind of show research, then you'll end up getting some weird ads and some weird stuff coming onto your feeds.
Say research 3 times fast.
Research, research, research.
Say
How's that?
moist 3 times
No,
fast.
I'm not getting into this.
Damn it. So is it popping up on screen?
Yeah, yeah.
She was the world's youngest self-made female billionaire, trumpeted Forbes magazine, the next Steve Jobs, and incorporated About Business magazine that put her on the cover. In 2014, Elizabeth Holmes, then 30 years old, was on top of the world. A Stanford University dropout, she had founded a company valued at $9 billion for supposedly bringing about a revolution in diagnosing disease. With a few drops of blood, Theranos promised that its Edison test could detect conditions such as cancer, diabetes quickly without the hassle of needles. Bigwigs from Henry Kissinger to General James Mattis sat on the board, but by 2015, the seams were coming apart. And within a year, Holmes was exposed as a fake. The technology she touted didn't work at all. And by 2018, the company she founded and collapsed. She's now being convicted by a jury in California on 4 counts of fraud, each of which carries a maximum of 20 years in prison. Like when they say life
Wow.
is 25. So like I always thought life was like your fucking life. You die in jail. Uh when it 20 years for each charge, that's 80 years for the 4 charges. So like she's like in her 30s. It was just weird because there's a video of her is pretty popular on the internet. After that magazine, a Business Insider. Now, all I have to give credit to my buddy Matt Fulmer. He brought this all up and exposed me to a lot of it. But when she saw that Business Insider magazine said she was like the next Steve Jobs, she next came on wearing a black turtleneck and her voice got deeper. Like she was wearing glasses and she was like, and the blood inside the machine will spin and it'll tell you if you have cancer. Now, the issue with this is that it gave fake diagnoses of pregnancies, miscarriages, a bunch of different things. And like that's the thing is when it's life and death or when it's a life thing, they'll pursue you. But if it's like that and money, and then anything else is like fair game, like Bernie Madoff, it was money. That's a criminal thing. But even then, they were like, he's gone away. It's like, what do you mean he's gone away? He went to an island. It's like, search every island. There's a lot of undocumented islands. It's like, well, how many are there? It's like, there's thousands. Jesus Christ. Do we have a person monitoring these? No, it's why Epstein's a thing. Well, that's why you invent a fucking person to go check these islands out. No, we don't do that because we got other stuff to do, like bombing another place. Okay, that's fair point, fair point, fair point. And they walk off. I'm going to do a show where I just
You're
rant.
so funny.
I'm just going to do a show where I wear
I'm tracking you.
sunglasses.
I'm seeing you going by. Well, I'm kind of curious if if Elizabeth Holmes, she's part of an investor scam. I mean, a fake product, fake technology or whatever. But then to build it, generally, it's done on investors. It's not necessarily done on customers. I'm kind of curious if that's her case.
No, she did it on customers. Like me and you could go there and be like, hey, I want to get my blood test to see if, my whoever died of whatever disease, can I get tested to see if that's a genetic thing and I have it? And they're like, yeah, you're going to have Parkinson's when you're 30. Next thing you know, that's the thing, is that there's a thing
Mm.
called a nocebo effect, where they've actually found bodies that experienced symptoms of cancer and like died of cancer, even though their cancer was benign. In an autopsy, they found out was that you get so conditioned. It's like during the
Mhm.
pandemic, there was articles written about like, oh, sorry, you're I think Jim Brewer's the person that highlighted this story to me. He knew a friend who went to the hospital. Next thing you know, brain dead. They were going to pull the plug on him. They said that he died from COVID. They wouldn't let his family see him. Dude was still alive. And then he was getting sick because they were pumping him with drugs and stuff. And he wasn't sick for this thing. He was going through something else. He was dehydrated, where he had seizures, and he ended up losing like some type of, it's a whole
Oh,
freaking story.
wow.
But it's the nocebo effect, where it's like, I mean, when you look at Ponzi schemes, the issue with her is that she was duping regular people. Now that
Mm.
happens all the time. Now, when what you're thinking is now, correct me if I'm wrong, do you think that there's someone bigger at the helm, like someone that's saying, hey, I need you to do this, like a conspiracy type thing? Or do you just think it's people just scamming people that are willing to invest? And at that point, you're willing to accept the loss in your money?
Yeah, I mean, at some point when you're having a product or a service and there's no proof that it's actually working, minus, what you're talking about where people believe that something is working and it's really not. But then to build such a huge business, I'd be surprised if it was built based on individual, little customers. It might actually be true in this case, but I was just thinking in terms of if you've got enough supposed customers for your product, then you do some level of reach out to investors to build your company to high levels to then further perpetuate this particular lie about your product or your service. And so I'm kind of curious about this particular one. I mean, it's sounds like it's a big deal if he's getting. Did you say she was getting four life sentences or something?
Yeah, 4 20-year sentences. That just happened recently, like before the
Hmm.
Ghislaine trial came out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not that old, but I feel like you would have better
Mhm.
luck with older ones, where like more information always gets leaked out over the next 5 and 10 years after it happens.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, and I always think like in terms of like cult behavior, where you're kind of manipulating people, scammers often use, very similar tactics, to kind of manipulate people into giving, money or service or whatever. So it's kind of like that human psychology piece that I'm always so fascinated about.
Let's play scam or truth. $5 for a BJ. Scam? Scam? Well, that's the thing, is like, I don't mind people getting it over on big wigs or people that were like have a lot of money.
Hmm.
Mostly because like if they're doing like, you never see things when it's like, oh, this person was caught. Like Jerry Springer's the best example. The man nobody remembers before his show was caught writing a check to a prostitute as he was running for like mayor or something like that. So it's like, yeah, step down, buddy. He knew what he did wrong. Like that's okay in my book. But when it's like, yeah, people like, I talked to a psychic medium, or not psychic medium, she's an exposer of psychic mediums. Now,
Hmm.
I'm open-minded to shit. I'll talk to either side, and I'll sit there
Yeah.
and listen and have a conversation about either one. The issue does become when you are giving someone a false reading and you know that you are, and you're doing it trying to feel like you're doing them a service when really that person just got duped out of $5 and $10. But no, TV show she was telling me wants to do something like that. They want to go after people for like the million cases, the ones, the big expensive ones. It's like, that's not important. What about the person that just lost like $5 for a lot of people is like food or death? So like that's a more important story in some aspects. But I mean, I don't know, it just doesn't sell.
Well, the other piece of that is not only just the monetary loss, but it's also a change in their behavior. You know, it's like if someone tells you that a certain thing is going to be in your future, that can impact a lot of your behavior for that future, and it could negatively impact your future. I
You're
mean,
gonna
especially,
die on a
someone
cruise
says you're
ship.
going to die, yeah, then you're going to change your behavior, and suddenly, you're not doing anything that's you know, potentially dangerous, or you're not like your case. I'm not going to go on a ship. I'm staying away from the ocean. I'm not going to do this cruise line, gift
But you
certificate.
live on an island. It's like,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah, but I mean, people's behavior starts to change, and then they can be a victim of their own, idea of what they're, should or should not be doing. It goes beyond, money. But yeah, I don't like the scammers. What was his name? The Amazing Randy. He used to have a foundation about, having people prove whether supernatural powers existed, or, in this case, like, psychic powers or whatever. And I believe since he's died, the foundation doesn't offer $1 million prize anymore. But for a long time, he was challenging people. Bring your skills, and we'll test it, and try and determine whether it's real or not. And no one ever won the prize.
It's a shaky line with scams because I think everybody gets mad when someone's pulled the wool over their eyes. It just depends on the situation. Like, because I've heard so many people say, like, well, you shouldn't have been an idiot that bought into that scam. It's like, well, first of all, you don't know a sales pitch.
Hmm.
Sometimes a sales pitch is sold really, really well, where next thing you're driving home like a Lexus when you just traded in a Ferrari. You're like, wait, what the hell just happened? You don't realize until you get into your driveway, park your car, realize that you made a giant mistake.
Hmm.
Uh, but man, like, I mean, what's a scam though? Because if we are, have you looked at like what the basis of a scam is? Because I mean, half the stuff that's like herbal supplements are fucking scams, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you there.
You should
Yeah.
start with the fitness industry. That's the biggest
Yeah,
fucking scam there is.
yeah. The regulatory body in like supplements and stuff. I mean, you can get away with a lot. As long as you're saying that it's not, FDA approved or whatever. You can say a lot in those supplements. I
Well,
mean,
they paid scientists in the beginning to blame that fat was bad for you rather than sugar. The sugar industry paid it was only a total of $50,000, and that fucked up generations where people. You don't know that story?
no,
So in the beginning, it was all about don't eat sugar, or no, it's not don't eat sugar. Don't eat fat. If you eat fat, you're going to get fat. They paid scientists $50,000, like a total of a couple of scientists, to make a fake study and say, yeah, it's the fat that makes you that's bad for you. They
Mhm.
published that, and then everyone was so afraid of eating fat, like fat's going to make you fat, when really it was sugar all along. And now society's starting to realize that that was the thing over like the past 10 years and everything. I wrote a
Yeah,
paper about it a long time ago when I was practicing like psychology and all that, but
yeah.
it,
It's
I
so
mean,
true, though. You think
it
about the industry, like the food industry, and how they've changed the direction in a lot of these different areas. The fat thing, definitely. There's so many like non-fat foods now, and that's not even the problem. It's definitely
almond milk is a
carbs
fucking
and
scam.
sugar, and oh yeah, I mean, there's so many things that it's like reduced fat, but then there's all this sugar, and of course, once your pancreas goes in, starts converting that stuff, it's like, what happened?
They
Someone
need to make
got
a
fat.
VR simulator that like puts on something like this and like what happens if so this VR simulator is going to fast forward you 90 years, but it's got like pain sensors on you. So like when you go, all right, once you drink that Coke, let's show what 90 years is going to look like to you. And then like you're dying of like a bladder infection, you have like a UTI or something like that. You're like, how did I get
Mhm.
this all from drinking Pepsi, which is our next sponsor on the podcast? Shout out to Pepsi.
Yeah, what was that virtual reality gaming movie? I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, they wear these bodysuits and go into the virtual reality, and feel the impact of a gunshot to the chest or whatever. I can't remember the name of the movie. It came out
What?
recently. There's a movie. It's like a
Sylvester Stallone in it?
no, no, no. It's like kind of that younger generation, and
You're
I know
talking like you're
people
80 years old.
people listening right now are like, they're telling us what it is, and I'm like, I can't remember what it's called.
If it's anything new, I have not seen
Ready
it.
Player One. Thank you, those of
Oh
you
shit. I know what you're
yelling at
talking
us right
about.
now. Ready Player One.
How'd you
That's it.
forget the name of that?
Like you said, I'm getting old. I'm
Okay.
getting old.
You want to try Elizabeth Holmes' Theranos thing to see if you have Alzheimer's? Come on.
I'm afraid
That's
what
so
might be
dirty.
discovered.
That's so fucking dirty to me. That's like that's why I love looking into like the government shit. Like the reason why I like politics so much, and people are like, you're like, I get labeled a conspiracy theorist. I don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, I entertain them as long as they don't get violent. But
Mhm,
I think it's like people think from a personal standpoint rather than a business standpoint. And from a business standpoint, these people are more than happy to fuck you over at any corner. If that means like a
mhm,
van pops up to your house and takes you away, people go, that's a government conspiracy. It's like, is it? Or is it just silencing someone who won't shut the fuck up about shit you're doing? Like it's not
mhm,
that hard. And it happens probably more than we think. I started following a page called Whistleblowers on Twitter, and they're like lawyers and all these things for whistleblowers. Now, the real ones, not the Facebook one, but you start
mhm.
getting into like, what's a scam? Well, is that a scam? Am I being tricked? Is it just so they can monitor me now? That, oh, we got this guy following us. He's looking for people that are voicing out shit. And then half the people you have on your show, you're just like, are you really a whistleblower? Yeah, I exposed the government and this type of thing. It's like, well, everyone knows that's public information because I made it public information. No, it was proven in this way. And they're like, they're stealing my idea. It's like, not an idea, just
Mm,
fucking fact. You can look it up.
mhm. Well, I mean, I think everyone's got some level of data that follows them that's being tracked by something or someone, and
Disney.
whether whether the government gets involved actively where you see it happen, or whether you see something that's actually not the government, but you think that it is, because you get paranoid about it. I mean, all that stuff is true. All that happens.
Try explaining it to someone like the way you just said that if you think you're looking into it, then it's not really happening, but it could be happening at the same. It's like no wonder people are just fucking losing it. My head starts to
Mhm.
hurt when I start thinking about a lot of stuff. Like I can get myself to the point where I overthink the matter and particles in my own hand to think that I can start phasing through walls and shit. I'm like, well, people talk about where vibration and frequencies. Why can't I
Uh-huh.
vibrate my hand fast enough to be able to vibrate through this table, which is just a particle of atoms, which my hand is a particle of atoms. So science, right? And then you go and run headfirst into a wall and realize that you can't phase through particles. But yeah,
Mhm. It's like, the men who stare at goats. Have you seen that one?
yeah,
Yeah.
that was an actual project that the government did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny movie. It's too bad that a lot of it's real, like, actually happened, you know, government training people to be, psychic,
I
warriors or whatever.
I rewatched that movie and then I was looking up a lot of social experiments that would happen. Like you can look up social experiments online, Milligram experiment, which I played on the show before. Then there's Stanford prison experiment, which was considered failed, which isn't a fail at all. It's actually a pass to show you. You know what I'm talking about? Stanford prison experiment.
No, I don't think so.
They have a
Was this
documentary.
was this a long time ago with, like, MK Ultra type stuff, or
So no, it's
Mhm,
actually a little bit before that. Stanford experiment is probably a little bit more recent, but you probably like social experiments a lot. I've
mhm.
talked about it a couple times. I can give you my social experiment I did.
Yeah.
So I would say something that I knew would be combative to like one of 10 people, and I would message them all privately. And I expected three responses. One, a person would just ignore you. They would see the message, but they wouldn't respond back to you because they didn't feel like dealing with it. Two, they would start being argumentative with you. And three would be like they would just shut down and be like, just it would be okay or some type of message like that. I did this, and this was the three choices I got out of like 10 people was either one of those three outcomes. And it was. That's exactly how it happened. So, what's one thing that really pisses you off?
I don't know, anything to do with kids that,
If I said
violence against kids.
all kids should be whatever, and then it's something that you don't agree with, you would message me back like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then
Mhm.
we would, if you didn't like know I was joking, you didn't know this experiment. If I just messaged you like, "And this is why they all need to be in this and this and this," you would get upset because it's something you care about. But a lot of people weren't willing to open up the door to conversation to why do you think this way? And it shows you out of the options that you really give out of the three, society would choose one of those three options. And I did it to 10 people. And it was an experiment that I did that. I mean, it wasn't really people think it was interesting, but at the same time, it was like it's fucking it was a stupid thing I was doing because I was bored as shit. And I thought of something. I was watching all these experiments online, but the Stanford
Mhm.
prison experiment was they had volunteers pulled off the street. They're all getting paid to be there. There were like I think it was 10 people that were prisoners and 10 people that were cops. There's a documentary you can watch on Netflix. Eventually, after a while, people would assume their roles. They all knew they were volunteering, they all getting paid for, and they can leave at any time they want. But eventually, the cops would take a police baton, start hitting right beside the prisoners, like an acting type thing. Then they started hitting prisoners. Then it showed you like the abuse of power. Next thing you know, there started to be a riot of people that wanted to leave, but they wanted the money. So they would stay and they would be sick and tired of people running in the middle of the night, tearing up all their room, throwing stuff around and treating them like shit, or they would fight back. They would get locked in a hot box or they would be naked in a little closet. They could leave anytime they wanted to. People started mentally breaking. It, my opinion, it was a pretty good experiment. But a lot of times when you're doing an experiment, you don't want people to know that they're in an experiment. You kind of want to just
Mhm.
test it and then tell them afterwards. And the Milligram experiment was that I played it on the show before. You have a person read a bunch of questions, and in the other room, there's another person tied to like an electric chair. He's not really tied to anything electric, he's just an actor. But the person would be told this person's tied to an electric chair. Every time they get a question wrong, you shock them. Now,
Mhm.
each shock goes up higher and higher and higher to it starts to hurt more. The person would go, ow, ow, ah, and start screaming. And the next thing you know, they wouldn't respond. Everyone would go through the whole entire experiment with no question as to why or what. But one person decided to be like, I'm not going to hurt this guy anymore. You can't make me do this anymore. And it shows you that more than willing people are more than willing to fall in line and do what they're told rather than raise a question as to why they are doing that. And that is exactly what you see happen today.
Mhm. I think with this global pandemic, we're seeing a lot of this type of behavior where some people are really sensitive and want to be taking care of other people, and they're willing to sacrifice themselves a lot to make sure that someone else is taken care of. And then other folks, they realize that they're in you know kind of maybe a power struggle, where there's someone who's trying to dictate to them what they should be doing, and they're going to refuse just because they don't like being in that position. And others are going to be in temporary willingness to participate and follow along, and then at some point they realize, and they protest, just like what's going on up in Canada, well, and other places. But I think you start to see that human psychology come out, and you're right. I mean, this type of like study, this type of work has been going on for years and years, and we know how humans respond. I was talking to my co-host on well, yeah, I guess it's a recent podcast. And we were talking about the trucker protests in Canada, and we were talking about early COVID, and how everyone was so like scared and paranoid, and there's this evolutionary component to being scared. It's like if you
Feels good.
imagine early human, when one person gets freaked out, and the next person, right next to them is going to freak out as well. You see this in animals all the time. You see it in skittish animals like deer, and then you also see it in more docile animals like cows, where you get one scared and suddenly there's a reaction with the rest of the herd. Now you've got a stampede. And with humans, we're still animals, we still respond that same way. And there's an evolutionary component to it, where the reason that many of us are here today is because we did panic and we did bail out. We were able to stick around and reproduce and get that next generation who also had the same propensity to run when there's danger.
I think
If you
people,
stopped and waited, then you would probably, in an emergency, not be able to go back and reproduce and create a next generation of people who would stop and think and analyze. We are kind of a product of our immediate response to flee.
I agree with you, but also I think you're missing some key factors.
Hmm.
There's a large amount of kids my age, younger, even getting younger than that, who are put on depression pills at such a very young age. You know what that leads to? Infertility. They can't get a hard on. I know it's joking in a sense, but no, that's 100% real. There's a study that John Hopkins did, and fuck John Hopkins, but still, it's a good study. They amount
Uh-huh.
of kids that just can't get it up are having low T, low testosterone. That not only affects your growth, it's your bone growth, it's everything, your muscular features. There are people that you'll meet in your generation, for instance, more alpha males you could point out. Like that guy drives a Harley, he smokes a cigarette, and he only likes dirt cheap beer. But now you
Hmm.
have kids that like daiquiris. You have kids that like they're more of what you would call a beta, but now they're the alphas. It's a whole evolutionary change because of the comfortability factor. We don't need to build our own homes anymore. There's certain jobs that do that. They'll still be real men in some aspects, if that's what you call a real man or a
Hmm.
real person, hard work, any of those types of things. But it's not being the requirement anymore. A lot of stuff is online now, which I mean advances you in a whole nother way. It just gets difficult because I feel like I've been getting into the younger dryas impact theory. I don't know if you've ever heard of that
Mm-mm.
before. It's like the earth has a reset and it's
Okay.
not really global warming. It's more like a freeze that's going to happen, like another instant freeze, which has happened throughout history. It's kind of like it goes a little bit deeper into like something I can't believe in really, which is that like the reason the pyramids are built the way that they're built was because that there was a whole other timeline of human species or another thing like that that did that and then they died out and then we're a different thing. So like how there's Neanderthals and there's another mixture that eventually creates Homo sapiens, and that's in our DNA as well too. They
Hmm.
think that there's like this, and I'm gonna have a like a main person who talks about it and write papers about it. I think he's wrote 1,000 something papers on it already. Um,
Cool.
come on and discuss it because I need to know more. I had one person explain it to me before, but it was so like, what the fuck is going on? Like it was just too much. Like your brain kind of loses track after you're being speeched at for like 45 minutes. I mean, you can go back and listen to it, but for
Hmm.
me, it was just like, Jesus Christ, I need someone to like walk me through the steps.
Hmm.
I'm a picture book type person. Um, but so like for instance the pyramids were probably built because there was a whole timeline of another species like humans. Like if we're just if we evolve from a small organism or shrew, whatever you believe, if we evolve from that, then depending on our environment or the time period or whatever, it's going to change upon that. So to say if we were born 1,000 years earlier, we probably look a hell of a lot different. We probably would have thicker chins, more musculature, probably taller, more athletic, like being able to jump higher, run faster, just basic things like that for that time period. So they think that the timeline that made it created the pyramids might have been a different timeline of species of human, kind of like an offset, like another dimension would be off by like maybe I'd have an afro or something like that. That's a different dimension, but there could be multiple timelines on the same planet, and we're just this one's coming close to an end. I mean, is that possible? Sure. But I also think we're heading into like a weird digital age
Hmm.
where it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that the next evolution of life will be a fact that we'll be in a metaverse type scenario, and then we'll be in these little microchips and satellites, and they'll have satellites scattered throughout the whole entire solar system. Because my fear right now is that a comet is going to hit Earth and it's going to kill us all. The fact that it hasn't happened already is pure fucking luck. I mean, there, if you look up like the number of comets that or asteroids that have come close to hitting Earth, there was like 20 in 2019 that could devastate a whole country. Even
Yeah.
more than that, like 100 nuclear bombs could go off. And that's kind of like the younger dryas impact theory is that like same meteor that hit the asteroids and a global freezing, whole shift in the climates of Earth, it's going to spark like to the end of society, and we're going to have to rebuild from organisms again and crawl back up the evolutionary process, restarting it over and over and over again. Well, one of those fucking asteroids could just take out the whole fucking Earth and then you're fucked there. That's everybody's idea of space colonization is we need to find a way to get to another planet because you don't know how long this one has. Not even worried about climate change. They're worried about a fucking asteroid or something from outer space because nobody remembers that like every second that an asteroid doesn't hit Earth is pure fucking luck. The fact that there's all these rocks and shit up in space that could easily hurtle onto our atmosphere, crush into our planet, and wipe us all out. That can happen at any fucking moment. But if you start thinking about it, you fucking you have a panic attack and you lay in your driveway for 45 minutes waiting for your neighbor to pour an Arnold Palmer on your face.
Well, the interesting thing is that, Earth has some level of protection, We have this magnetic field. We're trying to get to we're trying to get to Mars, and Mars doesn't have the same protections that Earth does. And the likelihood that humans would do well on Mars is actually far less than on Earth because the planet itself doesn't have the same level of protection.
Well,
But
actually, they might be going to Venus now. So
Venus, oh.
apparently there's two ways you can colonize on Venus that we didn't pay attention, but that atmosphere layer that we couldn't see through actually
Mhm.
under is pretty habitable when it comes to just life conditions. It's going to be a different change, obviously, but they're
Mhm.
like you can either break through that atmosphere, then find a way to make that sustainable. But it's like I think it's water or something like that that you have to deal with. But then you can build a cloud city, which is a city that's using propulsion systems to be able to float in the sky. That's what I've heard from like
Hmm.
well-known people who have like practiced space physics and all those types of things. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is.
But I don't know. I like Earth. I'm not going to leave this planet just
Yeah.
because I'm comfortable here. And if everybody else goes, good, maybe we need an apocalypse. I'm tired of paying fucking bills. We only, I mean, if all of
That's
society there was
funny.
a, if there was a global like solar flares, that's the
Hmm.
best representation. If there's a solar flare, we're all fucked. There's no technology anymore. Nobody remembers it was like in the 1920 or something like that. They had a solar flare that happened. Forgot the name of it, but literally people were using their cell phones, or not cell phones. They were using their like walkie talkies and shit without the battery being connected to it because there was so much electricity in the fucking air. It shut
Hmm.
down so much shit where it was just like power lines went down. All maybe it was earlier than that. It might have been early like 2000s, but that's like a real fucking like possibility. And the sun just went through this recently. It had solar flares
Hmm.
where Arizona was being fucked with. So you're just like, that's a fear, but nobody cares because their Netflix is working. They're going to watch a new series of Jack and the Beanstalk and they're going to eat popcorn and drink a martini.
Hmm. Well, going back to your, the thoughts on human evolution, if you think about all of the modern conveniences that we have, and we don't have the need to do a lot of the things that early humans really had to do. I mean, the hunter gatherer folks, now there are people who do that for the rest of the population. There's mass creation of food through farming and other things. I I, I'm kind of curious what humans will look like in, let's just say, 100,000 years, based on what we've seen so far. um, I think that the level of intelligence and I don't know. Here's where I kind of struggle, and that is
I have a theory.
because of all of the modern technology that we have to, like for instance, eyeglasses or drugs or whatever to artificially remedy evolutionary problems. Because if you think about it, before we had eyeglasses, if you had bad eyesight, you're probably not going to live long enough to reproduce. And so the bad eyesight probably won't continue to be in the gene pool through the generations. But now we can, I wear contacts. If I didn't have contacts, I wouldn't be doing as much stuff as I do today, as well as I do today. I'm kind of curious what that future holds because of these sort of artificial fixes for evolutionary problems. But with that being said, we were talking earlier about this idea that panic is an evolutionary trait. When one person panics, the rest of the population panics. We stop thinking logically. Well, now we've got all of these things that help us take a moment and think a little bit more logically. The people who have a propensity to stop and think and use logic a little bit more, those folks reproduce. Then maybe that is a trait that will continue in the gene pool. And then what happens when that solar flare hits, and everyone has to revert back to primitive living, and now you've got the reverse where all these people who would stop and think uh, can't because they're dead, because they end up, succumbing to nature instead of fleeing like early humans used to do.
When my internet went out and I couldn't do what I had scheduled to do, I just went to the store and got groceries.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you got to look at it from an aspect of like, you just got to adapt to the situation. And I'm just hoping that people haven't adapted out of their fucking skills. You know what I mean? Like, that's the weirdest thing is that,
But
like,
they have.
but I don't think that's entirely true. I think it's still dormant inside of us, much like our ancient genetics are still there. Like yeah, it's in a mishmash of shit that you can't fucking find. It's like a boiling pot, as I've been explained to by an archaeologist. So that's where a lot of my information comes from, is information from other people. You're going to have other people that are going to try and find information from other people and get different sources of information. Best part is that for me, I like to dive down the rabbit hole. I like to be jokingly, do I think the world's going to die from like a robot invasion? No, but it's fun to entertain the thought of it and try and see ways and different things because you get a better understanding of like maybe what a person's mindsets of or thinking of. Now, is there a real digital fear coming up? 100%. It's getting fucking scary with the metaverse. It's getting scary with all that stuff. How normalized it's become, where people just drop it in a thing like it's the metaverse. It's a cool video of the metaverse. It's like before everyone was making fun of the guy for like creating a thing called the metaverse. Like, who's this jackass? Now he's like, nobody talks about that type of stuff.
Hmm.
Like, you got to be very careful of your surroundings where a sense of paranoia is okay. Like, my buddy, he's talking about digging into conspiracies so much, he gets paranoid now. But also, you want to be aware if there's a car on your block that's been sitting there for 2 days and you've never seen it before. Like, that's important stuff to be aware of. It doesn't mean go like call the cops or check their plates or walk over there with a bat. It just means you should be aware, like, hey, like maybe you should have your door locked. Maybe you should, have these certain precautions on some things. The weird part about panic
Hmm.
is it's like a mixture of fear and anger. If I told you kids were being molested in that pizza shop, you're going to get fucking angry. But also,
Mhm.
people are afraid of the action that people take because of something out of being anger. So it's like fight or flight. Like, that's dormant inside of us. That's been known throughout all of our genetical history. So I start looking at an aspect of like, what's fight or flight to you? The issue is I think what you're hitting on is, what are you considering a risk? Everyone's wires are backwards. Like, everyone's looking at politicians as like a risk factor, and in some cases that is true. Not every single case. When it comes to the factor of you going to your fucking job, you shouldn't be having a panic attack because somebody might be the 2024 president or something like that, or
Mhm.
Biden has to give a speech and you're afraid he's going to stumble over more than just a couple of words. You shouldn't have that fear. You can't have your wires crossed like that. And in a sense, I think what you're kind of hitting at subtly is like brainwashing in some aspects. Being in fear of the pandemic for so long has caused people to lose basic functions of how to, I guess, go back into society. There's a lot of people that don't want to. And I mean, I talked about when lockdowns first were done. When I was driving my car, like out of my neighborhood, someone just walked right across the street to a fucking yard sale with a mask on. And I was like, you didn't even look. You just walked. You said, fuck it. Like, you forgot because you've been inside your house for too fucking long. That
Mhm.
happens a lot of things. Even when I took a break from the show for a little while, that month period, I didn't talk to anybody. I mean, I coming back to it, I was nervous as shit because I
Mhm.
hadn't had that conversational practice anymore. I didn't know if I lost it. And that's a real fear. When you forget something or you stop doing something because something made it easier for you to do something, instead of writing letters, people text. Instead of um fuck. Instead of mailing, or instead of going to Walmart, people can Amazon it. Like,
Yeah.
that's eventually going to lead that way. It might not be the start of it, and it might sound weird saying it, but eventually that's going to be very, very normal. Like, listen to something you said 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Most people can't because they don't have it recorded. I do. It sounds funky when I'm saying, like, man, that's so normal now. Like, why was I so afraid of it back then? It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
because it's slowly worked its way in. It's kind of like in your divorce papers, she just subtly puts in, and I get the house. And you're like reading over all the, you're going to take my surfboard. You're going to take my motorcycle, my black leather jacket. And then you don't see the house at the bottom.
Mhm. I was talking to a contractor friend of mine recently, and he was talking. We were just talking about like our kids and the folks that we see going through workforce of today, and how it seems like a lot of kids have not decided to learn stuff, but rather learn how to learn stuff. Like, not, maybe I'm not saying it right, but be able to Google something and figure out how to Google versus figuring out how to do the original skill that was necessary to complete the job. Like, they'll go onto YouTube and figure out how to, replace your carburetor or whatever, in your car, or, windshield wipers, whatever, instead of having an actual skill of being able to do that without having to go search for it. People are learning how to utilize Google more effectively instead of learning these other skills. And in some cases that's, it's very true. I mean, I see that in my kids, and
It's good and bad,
you know,
though.
it is. And but I think the dependence on those particular tools is a problem. Instead of like, for me growing up, I would take apart stuff. My parents hated it because I was so curious. I wanted to see how stuff worked, and I didn't always get it back together the way it was supposed to be. But through that process, I figured out how to troubleshoot things, to how to identify components and what they did and how they related to the bigger machine. And I'm not seeing that from these younger generations. I see them going to YouTube and figuring out, watching someone else do it and not caring about the components and how they interact with each other, but rather, okay, here's the step by step process to fix this particular item. And that dependence on the tool of Google or YouTube or whatever, I think creates a problem when those tools either go away or change in such a way that doesn't allow you to utilize it the same way.
Well, I mean, eventually they're just don't everything will be in their hands. Like when I was trying to fix my modem, okay, I unplugged it 30 seconds, plugged it back in, reset it, checked the wires on it, did everything you're supposed to really do before you give them a call. Because giving them a call is the worst fucking thing in the world. I call them, they said they blocked my internet. I'm like, why'd you block my internet? Oh, overpayment balance. I'm like, okay, that's out of my hands. When someone's Xbox breaks and they have to send it in to get a new one because they tried everything, they tried cleaning it out, they tried opening up themselves, fixing wires and all this stuff. They can't do it. They have to send it in. Every single problem, they're just going to eliminate by them having to do it for you.
Hmm.
And that's the thing, is that you're not giving kids a chance to be able to, there's no incentive for them to try and figure it out on their own. If you broke your toy, you tried your best gluing it to put it together, or you did something to be able to, make sure that it goes back together, and you're going to be careful with that leg because the leg pops off because you broke it throwing it at your brother or something like that. There's none of that anymore. Everything happens to do with a technician that has to come to your house and fix it, or you're not teaching people to be able to do things for themselves anymore. And the only things you do for yourself or write your own Twitter posts. And half the time they do that for you. And even then they limit you to fucking 256 characters.
Well, just thinking about that tech person, that you call to fix a problem. A lot of the time, those folks will have a step by step guide to fix a specific thing. They'll have a flow chart to figure out, what direction they need to go in questioning, the customer, or their troubleshooting process. But a lot of like the old school techs, they would already in their brain already know the flow that they would need to take. They wouldn't have to actually look at a chart that was created by some, manager someplace. They had the skills to navigate and troubleshoot and figure stuff out. I think in, this world of, I know more people today that have never been camping than like, because I live in Oregon, than when I was a kid, people who had been to like California. It's it's amazing. It's like people nowadays, they've never gone to the outdoors and tried to rough it, tried to, lay out under the stars, try and build a fire, do any real basic survival stuff. Most people now, they don't even want to do it. And if they were like stranded or something, they'd be dependent on their phone or, some person that was near them. They don't have the skills to kind of figure stuff out, at least not for, any length of time, maybe until they
Well, camping's
die
not
of
going to be an option
hydration.
anymore. I mean, camping used to be an option for you to do whenever you wanted because there were fields to do so, at least in my town. And then now
Mhm.
you go to the campground or whatever they have for you, there's campers all so stacked up beside each other. There's no point in even camping. You don't feel like you're more than anything you were when you're in your apartment or something.
And
I
you're
mean,
certainly not roughing it.
yeah, well, I mean, after doing tents for so long, we eventually got a camper when I was a kid, and that was a hell of a lot better. But I spend
Mhm.
most of my time outside because there's nothing that beats the warm crackling of like a fire log. I don't know when you
Mhm.
hear those pops or knots in the woods, it's just something different. The next day you smell like fucking smoke. It's terrible. You have to go take a shower and shit. But
Yeah.
it was an experience in its
Mhm.
own. I mean, you were away from the cell phone, you were away from a lot of that type of stuff. You got to go out and experience fresh air and do those types of things.
Mhm.
Um, it's but I haven't done it in years probably just because there's not really an option to in a beach town except have a bonfire on the beach. But even then it involves drinking beer where it's like
Mhm.
you're missing part of the experience as well too. People just want to get hammered on the lake or do something like that. It's like you gotta like I definitely think what you're trying to say and what I'm getting from it at least, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but
Mm.
I think you say you need a lot of on-hand experience. And sadly, I mean, the best advice I was given to when I was like rejected, they were like, okay, keep asking. Eventually that rejection is not going to sting as bad. And I'm like, yeah, but the fucking ow, man. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's
but
what it
you're
is. It's a
conditioning
job
yourself.
interview. Yeah.
You're
Well, a job
conditioning yourself
interview,
for that.
you don't want to have people going in and getting rejected at every single job. A lot of times people go into a job, and especially in today's job market, they get the job immediately because people need people.
Mhm.
But the issue that I have with that is people need people, but they're paying you so much. If you don't do one thing right, they'll be more than happy to fire you, where the power starts to shift. The power goes from you holding the power to them holding the power. And then now you're afraid to lose your job. I asked for a raise fucking by the time this comes out, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So, and I haven't heard a fucking single message back because I am so afraid that it would, if I ask, it's going to be getting fired. And there's no point in that, but that's a fear aspect that a lot
Yeah.
of kids have to deal with. And I love my fucking job. It's at a gym, man. That's
Mhm.
perfect for me. I'm going to go
Yeah.
do 6 hours of cardio tonight. So I'm fucking ready.
Jeez. Yeah, not me. I'm not. I'm gonna sit home and drink beer tonight, I think.
That sounds more fun.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, you think about the skills though that you developed as a kid. As an adult, you can go back and survive those things just fine. It's those kids that were never exposed to it. My kids haven't spent as much time doing the outdoorsy thing because similar to you, we got ourselves a camper and got to a point where we were not roughing it anymore. But there are certain skills that they developed when they were younger, and even today, even though we spend the night in the camper, we still go and do things. We learn stuff that's out in nature or whatever. But the other is, I got a teenage kid who's driving his own car, and I always wonder how much of an adult he's becoming and what his skills are to survive. Let's just say, he's on a road trip and gets stranded, or finds himself without some sort of resources. What does he do in that? If he doesn't have a cell phone battery that's
Think about
charged
the
or
people that
whatever.
don't have a dad or parent to be able to call when they do get a flat tire.
Hmm.
That's a sad thing for a lot of people, and sadly, that's not taught in schools unless you get an automotive like class or something like that. That's like at a tech school or something like that. But how many kids go to a tech school?
Yeah. What used to be a standard thing in schools, like shop class, is not a standard thing anymore.
Well, because
You know.
everything evolved. There's like computer programming classes, coding classes, which I think are important too. That gives you a whole set of skills. But
Hmm.
I think once you start learning or noticing, and I'm glad I noticed it at such a young age, is that everyone has their own area of expertise and information. Doesn't make you or them better than whoever. It just means that you guys can learn more from each other. Like there needs to be a little bit more of teamwork, I would say, without making it sound like a corny little speech. I just think that there needs to be an open platform of discussion and stuff like that. And I don't see a lot of that really happening anymore. I mean, I've talked more shit and I've also protected more shit on many things. I'm always back and forth on it because you need to have that perspective in there. If you have a bunch of a table of people agreeing with you and not bringing up some problems in your ideas, then what the fuck are you even doing having people there at all? Like
Hmm.
you need people to say that your idea is shit. No, you can't have glow in the dark socks. Doesn't fucking work like that. Or you need people to agree with you too, positive encouragement in the right moments. But people don't know when those lines are. People say, I'm honest or I'm true or I'm this. Well, saying someone's a piece of shit is not being true. It's being an asshole. Even if you are being truthful to them being a piece of shit, you don't say it like that. You,
Hmm.
you have to use your words properly. And sadly, I think so many words are being blended into so many other things now that nobody really knows what to believe. I mean, fact checker used to be fact checker. It's not fact checker
Hmm.
anymore. Fact checkers are opinion makers or opinion based people. Well, then that ruins the term of fact check. Well, then science must not be real. Why do you say that? Well, there's pseudoscience. Okay. Well, there was a reason why pseudoscience was created. Yeah, but isn't all science technically just a theory in general? And it's just the one that we all agree on? That may be true, but it's the one that the general public agrees on. So I'm pretty sure the earth is round. I don't know. I just saw a post from Flat Earth Society. You know what the post said?
Hmm.
We have members all across the globe. And then someone commented, say that slowly.
That's hilarious. Well, it's like me being an atheist and I say God all the time, It's like I gotta check what I'm
I
saying
recently
because
became religious.
did you like of religion that we know? Like a
No, no.
more common?
You
No?
notice people start to become more religious before they die.
Oh, I think it makes sense. I think that people want to believe that there's something that's,
Got to bury the hatchet.
yeah.
Most scientists are atheists.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
Well,
they
and to
seen
me it,
something.
it does kind of make sense. But
It's Russell's teapot, is what it is.
Russell's teapot. Is that
Never
the
heard of
one that
that?
is that the one that's floating around in space and
Yeah.
There's a claim that, yeah, uh-huh,
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It's like that's fucking
yeah,
true. But I'm about to spend 90 years of my life looking through a fucking penny-sized telescope.
looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just have to have faith that it's there, and you know, other people can tell you, you prove it, and when you could just say in return, no, you prove it. You prove that it's not up there. Like, oh, geez. Now we're talking about burden of proof, and that's, to be honest, a lot of what's going on in religion today. Where's the burden of proof? If you make the claim, generally you should be the one to prove it's true or not. It's not the person who says, I don't believe you, you know?
Have you ever thought about interviewing people on your show?
Yeah, just from people that I know, including yourself, getting interviews is tough. I don't know that I could spend the time
Oh, I thought you
doing.
were like, because I was on your show. I was like, I haven't been
uh,
on your fucking show.
no, no, it's just, it's hard to book people, and you got to be on it. And I mean, I don't know how you do all the things that you do, but
No sleep.
just yeah, 6 hours of cardio, maybe.
Mhm. That's how I get my
Yeah.
guests. I just scroll through Twitter and follow a bunch of accounts. Whatever ones follow me back, I fucking send them an email or send them a message and tell them, hey, here's
Oh,
how this goes if you want to check it out.
yeah.
I
Well,
have
you're
such a
you're
back
good at it.
catalog. You don't even need to fucking like. You just see someone has 1,000 something episodes. It's like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. You've talked to plenty of people. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, yeah. You've got some cred now. Yeah. No, I think it'd be fun to do some interviews, but it takes a lot of time just right now for me doing any kind of show prep plus the editing. My co-host and I meet once a week and go over how things have been. We look at some analytics stuff. We talk about a little bit of marketing or strategy. Then we figure out what topics we want to start covering, and put that in our calendar, and then repeat the cycle. It's just like over and over again to add an interview. That's another layer of work.
You'd be
Podcasting is not easy.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people want to talk about themselves. Where it's
Hmm.
like tried to talk to so many people where all they want to do is like, yeah, I'll be more than happy to talk about my work. It's like, well, that's not necessarily what the show is. Like we can hit that, but it's also like a free thing of conversation. And it's like then it starts to feel weird. Like the person start to feel like they're pulling back a little bit. I'm like, I felt that through a fucking message that you pulled back a little bit. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you just got to figure out what you want to do and how you want to make it, and you got to make it your own in a sense. Like I don't think I have it figured out at all. I probably won't have it figured out by like till the 10,000th episode, but hopefully fucking I mean there's times that sometimes I just go I don't want to do the show anymore, and I just might end it there. It
Hmm.
happened to me 2 days ago. I was like I don't think I want to do the fucking show anymore, just because it does become tasking. Your workload becomes a lot, so you have to learn how to manage it properly. Be 1,000 times easier. People just God guessed for me, but that's not how it works. um it's easy to
No,
fire on a microphone and just talk.
but I agree. Well, so like the other side of what I do is I coach the javelin throw, and I've been doing it for, I want to say, it's rearing up to 20 years. I think it probably is. And there are days where I'm just like, this is the last coaching session. This is the last time I'm posting a video. This is the last time, and just because I'm to that burnout, and then I let a little bit of time go by, and I'm like, oh god, okay, I do kind of miss it. It's, if you're good at something, and you think that there's more that you can do in this particular area, then you kind of get drawn back into it.
I did 14
um
hours of cardio in 2 days on my first weekend off from not doing this show after I took my break.
wow.
I realized that I was getting very, very bored because I was just working out for 4 or 5 hours normally, and then I would do
Mhm.
cardio on the weekends. I mean, I
Wow.
take weekends off now, and even then, like I have right now, if I was to keep the log that I have right now, your episode would be releasing in middle of March.
Mhm.
Because the weekend thing, doing that, not so I might there might be some weekends where I do it and some I don't. Honestly, at this point, I'm just leaving a record out there. I don't expect to get like I know people that have 11,000 followers on Twitter and they only have 200 subscribers. I'm like, you
Mhm.
start to realize like who's watching your shit? Are they
Yeah.
getting stuff from it? Hopefully, one person pulls something from it or really enjoys whatever you're creating. That's kind of like the whole point I think about life is just people are just looking for content and stuff. And sometimes they don't know what that is. But once you get into the spotlight, like I had one Joe Rogan guest that's led to all the others now. By the time this
Mhm.
comes out, there'll be five that's been on the show. So I mean, it's just
That's awesome.
I never wanted to reach out to famous people, and I still don't like doing it. But at the same time, it's for you guys, the people who have been on my show, who could say, "Holy shit, I was on that same show as that person." It's like that's kind of like that to me
Mhm,
is fun when a buddy messages me and says, "Holy shit, you got him? That he's like one of my heroes." I'm like, "Yeah, fucking,
mhm.
I don't know him, but hey, if you know him, good for you."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I get excited, when you and I are chatting, I get excited for your success and the things that you're doing that's like new and kind of exciting.
What
Um,
success?
you know,
I want Theranos money.
yeah, right. Yeah, doesn't most of us. I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon, but well, there's lottery winnings.
If you told me,
That's
I've been doing that too. Fuck, I'm so happy you said that. I've been thinking about it. I've been like, I've been going up to the machine, like, all right, well, $100 million, really? Like, I get
You
random
get
numbers in
sucked
my
in.
head all the fucking time. I'm like, this has to be it. Either that or I'm going slowly insane. So I'm like 32, 64, 28, 52, and then I play it, and I want to see if that's gonna actually work one time because I'm
Mhm.
getting like this weird feeling in like my lower part of my sack. It might be ball cancer, but or it might be like a lucky winning ticket number. I
That's
don't know.
funny. Yeah. I think that there are people who have won different lotteries more than one time, and I'm always kinda curious, is that because it's just luck, random, or do they actually have a strategy? Is there
You
something
know,
like
I used to work at a casino.
Oh, you did?
So when I was working security and I was watching people win, you had people like my buddy, for instance, he was on my show, like my 50 something episode. 2 weeks before he won a BMW at the casino, he was telling me how much he would like, oh yeah, this week I won like $600. Last week I lost a grand. And it's always up and down, up and down, up and
Mhm.
down. And I said, then why the fuck are you doing it if you lose more than you gain? And then next thing you know, he wins a fucking BMW after I said it on my show. So it was
Mhm.
like, you get to these points where it's like some people like they just are lucky, they know they're going to win. A lot of it has something to do with confidence. Like if you're willing to, most of it's about betting high. If you're having the confidence to bet $1,000 on a 20 or whatever, some type of small machine, and you're willing to lose that, a lot of people aren't willing to lose that, so they bet low. Then your probability of winning goes down because of how much you're betting. For me, I
Mhm.
can't even think about putting a 25 cent into a machine, anything more than that. But some people put $100 up like it's nothing, and then they'll win 600.
Yeah. I'm kinda like, I just want more I want more of a sure thing, you know? If I'm gonna put in 10, $100 towards something, then there's gotta be some benefit to me other than the hope that I might win something bigger, I kinda need to see something that's more likely, you know? But, I mean, interestingly enough, though, I know someone personally who won $250,000 in Oregon lottery, and, but she's been playing the lottery for years. I mean, I don't know, 40 years.
If you win two
So
hundred and fifty thousand dollars, you got to set like 50,000 of that aside and just use that 50,000 to try and gamble more to win more money.
well, it's interesting because I thought, well, that's a sizable amount of money, although I think it was like 80 grand was taken out in taxes or something.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ, how many
yeah.
fucking taxes
Oh,
are
I
gonna
know.
take out?
I know. But she paid off a little bit of debt that she had remaining, and then she just put everything else in the bank. So
I'm
she's,
never gonna win the lottery.
yeah,
I'm
me. Well, I'd have to play.
I
My brother's always telling me, "Oh yeah, I'll if I win, I'll retire you. Yeah, no worries." I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna rely on him to win the lottery because I have a hard time putting money towards stuff that the likelihood of you getting anything out of it's so incredibly low.
I see the 3.2 billion on the board and I'm like, okay, 3.2 billion when someone just goes, well, that's like 1.9 with taxes taken out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, type it on Google. What crime can I commit for $1.9 billion dollars? Can I like rob a bank and then just like give up outside? Is that cool?
Mhm. Don't you think it's crazy though how much taxes are taken out of something like that?
They
It's
take taxes when you're dead. They take,
Mhm.
I mean, even like when you're getting someone like cremated or something like that. Like, we recently had to, well, by the time this episode comes out, it's been a couple of weeks now, but we had to cremate my uncle
Mhm.
and his ex-wife that we haven't seen in like, and they're not even exes. They were still technically legally married, but they
Hmm.
had divorce. Divorce is like the worst thing for a lot of people where they'll just stay married to someone they haven't talked to in fucking ages just to not go through all the fucking proceedings with it. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's interesting. It's like, when people are getting married, like they're in their young 20s and they're like, we're going to get married. We're going to build a house. We're going to have a golden retriever. And then they get married and everyone's giving them all the gifts and they kiss and do the cake thing and then it's over with. Then, like, what? the government's just like, happy congratulations, we're going to give you a little break on your taxes. And then they're just sitting there waiting in the back of the head, like, we know it's going to end in a fucking divorce and we're going to get so much more fucking
hmm
money.
In every aspect of your life, they're taking something. How many billions of dollars did Elon have to pay in taxes? Was it 11? Was it more than that? 20 something
Jesus,
billion?
I wish I had that money.
Yeah, but I mean, he had to
I would
cash
adopt
out
every
his
kid in Africa.
well, well, I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but I mean, he made a bunch of money on some stocks that he had to sell because of some sort of expiration, and because of that, he had to pay taxes on that. And I think I don't know. You might have to Google that one, but I want to say it was like $20 billion or something, and then and so he has the record for the largest payment to the government in taxes in history. But then I want to say that he, in addition to that, like donated over $6 billion to charity.
Well, that's
So,
to avoid taxes.
well, you can use that as a write off, but we're talking how much money he paid to other people. Like he didn't put in his own pocket.
You know what I think?
you know.
You want to hear a conspiracy I've been thinking about?
Hmm.
I think gas prices are going up because they're trying to get back a lot of the money they gave out during this pandemic.
Oh,
If
you think
gas is
they're?
almost at $4 when we're recording this,
Hmm.
I'm thinking that with all the money that they gave out, if they have that going for a year, they would make a lot of that fucking money back. How many people are gassing up daily just to make sure that their car can get to their fucking long distance job?
Uh, it kind of that makes me think about a
Groceries
term.
too, inflation.
Yeah, I heard a term. What was it? Modern monetary theory.
It's going
Does
to drop
that
right when
sound
Biden
familiar?
croaks.
Yeah, but there's like this theory that all of this national debt, all this debt from the United States, is doesn't matter because the U.S. controls the world currency, which is the dollar, and they can print and print and print and print, and it really doesn't matter like the amount of debt that we have because we're at what, have we crossed over 30 trillion now? Something like that.
Well,
It's up there.
if they made burning money legal, then anytime someone gets money from that day or whatever, you just add numbers into their bank account like money, and you bring
Hmm.
the currency down by burning whatever bills you got.
Hmm. Yeah, but the idea that we would put so much money into the economy, which of course has contributed to all the inflation that we have, but it's such an odd thing for me to think, like compared to my personal finances, where if I've got a bunch of debt, then I don't want to go out and get more credit cards or more debt in order to pay for what I do, in my life. It doesn't make any sense financially because at some point, someone they're not going to loan you the money anymore because you're just not credit worthy. But the United States, they're the ones kind of in charge of the current, standard currency.
Well, credit doesn't make fucking sense. You have to prove that you're going to pay back money that you took out. How about I just pay my fucking bills on time instead of taking money out or charging things and then paying that bill at the ending to show that I'm a reliable person? It doesn't
Hmm.
make any fucking sense. Go in debt and then show that you can pay your way out of debt. Like, what are we talking about? That is the
We're going back to
dumbest shit
scams.
to me. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't. I mean, to be honest, it just makes sense for me personally having a budget and making a certain amount of money and then living a certain standard of life with what I make without incurring debt that someone else is going to be having some sort of control over me. It doesn't apply to our federal government the same way, and they can keep spending and spending and spending. And yes, they want to increase taxes to help cover some of this stuff, but really they're spending way faster than they're earning, and they're not. It doesn't appear that they're worried about it. Was it Venezuela or was it another country where their inflation went up like thousands of percent, and they ended up printing $1 trillion bill or equivalent of $1 trillion bill in their currency. Have you heard of that?
I don't know. I only count my money in gems. I'm gonna
Yes.
start buying small little pieces of like gold and diamond and use that to trade and see what the fuck people will do.
Well, then you start thinking about like cryptocurrency and the potential for that because it's not
That's a
controlled
Ponzi
by a
scheme.
It's not centralized, you know.
That's a Ponzi scheme. That's
Well,
like
it's not
people who
tangible. There's nothing.
well,
You can't.
Bitcoin crashed, and I called it for the longest time. I was like, Bitcoin's going to crash, and it finally did because it's basically insider trading. If you created the app and you know how to work with all the other apps that you're in partners with, you're going to tell everyone, gonna do this or drop a hint like Doge, and then people go,
Mhm.
Dogecoin, buy Dogecoin, buy
Yeah.
Dogecoin. And then next thing you know, they're selling their Dogecoin and they're making bank off of the money that they're selling. And they can
Hmm.
create it at any time. They have the coding to be able to do so. It's like a
Hmm.
blueprint. Like if you had the plates to make money, the government owns those plates, but so they can print more money. Well, Elon and all them own the platform. They can just create more of it.
Yeah. Well, and each of those cryptos will have a different, a different way of existing. Different requirements to whatever it is. But then you start seeing them split off, like Ethereum split off, and some of these others. I mean, Bitcoin split off from its original code. There's
As
there's
soon
a
as an app asks for my credit card, I tell it to go fuck itself.
That's a good policy, I think. That's a good policy. Speaking of, I mean, this isn't like money related, but there was a like an online get well soon card for someone that's like a coworker, and everyone's on board. Yeah, we'll say, send our best wishes to this person from the digital world, right? Instead of doing the old school, everyone signs a get well soon card. And so I went to participate, and it asked me to create an account. And it was like immediately, no, I'm done. I'm not. I will go back to the old school. I'll go buy a card and sign it and send it off to him versus me creating an account on some service that I don't know what they're going to do with my account unless you read the fine print. I don't want to go and create more accounts online unless it's absolutely something that I, need, like podcasting platform or, you know, some
That
app that's really, really important to me, but not just like do a get well soon card.
I know
You
I'm on like 9 podcast platforms, but then when I typed in my show name to get my find like what the top result is, mostly
Hmm.
I was looking for the Wikipedia thing that usually pops up that tells like a brief description of the show, and I was like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
that's cool. I have one of those now.
You're on Wikipedia?
No, not Wikipedia. It's
Oh.
like a Wikipedia thing. When you like, I'll show it in a second. Like when I type in, see, I can pull up my internet. Like I said, we're
uh,
in a storm, so I'm trying to be careful with pulling this shit up. If
you
I
guys
type in
still hammered by
out
winter
of,
weather?
I've been getting hammered on it. No, I just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 6 hours of cardio. Uh-huh.
Um, what is it?
Yeah. It seems like there's a whole bunch of like podcasting platforms, but they all are
This thing.
like an aggregate service.
Well, I'm on like 20 podcasting platforms and I only know of
Mm-hmm.
8. So I'm like finding
Mm-hmm.
them all. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So
Oh
like if
yeah.
you see this little thing right here,
Mm-hmm.
conversations with people, never knowing where it goes, support this podcast. That's my anchor description. But that's like
Yeah. That's a good
that's a
one.
thing that pops up when you type it in, and then you get like
Mm-hmm.
my Twitter, you get the YouTube. But
Yeah.
I'm on like 8 different platforms that I don't. I mean, I knew of 8 platforms, but I'm on like 20. And the next
Mm-hmm.
thing you know, it's like, hey, I get emails like, hey, I found your podcast, I liked an episode, so I made a site that's specifically for your podcast, and it's like then you get those fishy emails, and then you'll be like, I have my own like free content site that's like a YouTube, but it doesn't flag you and doesn't take down your stuff. Freedom of speech is everything. And then like I put you on my site, so then I'm like, God damn it, I have to create an account on there and then claim my account. And then it's like, fuck, I forgot my password. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, what the fuck, man? I should
Mm-hmm.
only know 2 passwords in my life: the password to my fucking debit card and the password to my fucking what is it? To my Gmail. That's all I care about.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't you feel guilty though? Like if there's an opportunity to get yourself out on some new platform to like, oh, I probably should do that. But then at what point then you lose track,
Eat
like you're saying.
my ass. That's what I say. Stitcher, I know Stitcher, for instance, I was going to do that, but then I got to pay this much. And I'm like, well, you see better results. I'm like, I might as well just stick on the free platform. And it's like, dude,
Mhm.
it's just,
Is
it
Anchor where you
sucks.
started?
Yeah, that's where I'm
Hmm.
still at.
Yeah. 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 Us too. I actually I've been satisfied with their stuff. And are you posting video podcasts to Spotify now?
The last results on the mobile app, since they haven't updated for video yet, tells me my last episode was 996. And I'm like, well, 997 and on has been when I started doing videos. So Spotify has video for everyone to enjoy. And I like it better. I like to listen to stuff as well, but I also like to look at the videos sometimes as well, too. I don't turn on TV anymore. So when I'm mostly listening to podcasts and trying to learn, or
Hmm.
you got to write a book, Scott, because I've been talking to a lot of authors now, and I'm
Hmm.
like, this is fun, man. Like people researching things that might not be known or less known. I was reaching out to because I did an episode about climate change with my buddy who's an environmental historian. His name's David Tibbs. It was 10 to 5, I think it was. Um, I'm reaching out to people who are like pro coal energy, pro solar energy. I'm getting every single perspective of it so I can understand it a little bit better as well too. Because I definitely think climate change is happening. I just don't know if it's not like the younger dryas impact where it might be a global freezing. Because like right now we're having storms like crazy. It's going to snow again. So it's like what the fuck, man? Like so
Yeah.
I think the Earth is off balance. I want to learn more about it, and that's usually how I pick the people I want to talk to. Also AI shit,
Hmm.
but they're very hard because you look at like any type of thing to do with AI, which is there's artificial intelligence, there's deep learning, there's deep mind, there's artificial general intelligence, there's systematic learning, there's computation programming, there's computer evolution, there's like three other ones I'm trying to
Hmm.
remember. But every single account you look that up for, everyone's like based in India. And I'm like, are you a bot? Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's hard to know what's fucking true. Like, people say they have a PhD in this type of thing, and you click on them. It's not even a race thing. It's just a factor of like, when you call anybody a tech support, you usually get a certain type of people, Russian or something like that. Someone,
Hmm.
and it's just like, it's not that you're against those people. It's just like, is this real? Like, am I talking to a real person half the time? Are you actually going to give me the things that I need? And
Hmm.
even saying that, it sounds gross, like I'm being like against society or I'm being racist or something. It's not like that at all. It's just there's not a lot. That's not a big area of study in the States. And it's not a big area of study in the UK. You know what is a big area of study? Evolution. Things of like science and biological anthropology and all those types of things. That's every single person in that field is basically white. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't want to talk to them too. I would like to highlight some other well or less known people, but everyone, dude, that's the biggest criticism I get. That's the biggest criticism I get is you are racist because you only have white people on your show. I'm like, look past 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at a lot of the different universities, you probably could find some folks that be willing to talk in these specific areas who actually have practical working knowledge of that particular field. Um, but yeah, I think the internet's kind of a hard thing because there is just so much out there and you never know really what's good, reliable information. But if you look, at certain
I've talked to
universities,
four people from India, four
Mhm.
people throughout my show. They've all been train wrecks only
Yeah.
because internet's a big factor when it
Oh,
comes to
yeah.
doing a show and them cutting out constantly. One person had a parrot in their house, a legit parrot. They were living their house didn't have a door. They were on the street. I gave that person my time, but there was connection issues. There was screaming going on in the background because parrots like scream. It's
Yeah.
like at some point as well too, it's also about you're not even going to listen to the content because it's unlistenable. So
Yeah.
that's the thing as well too. It's like you need to have internet, and sadly, the places that have the best internet are only in certain countries compared to other countries. And that's not my fault. That's not me selective picking. That's me not being able to do a podcast because I've had so many fail because of internet connections. Whether it's whatever country you're in, if your internet doesn't work, it's when it's unsalvageable. I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when there's audio issues, when there's I mean, even like using Zoom, sometimes there are little glitches and it ruins the flow. But if there's audio issues, oh man, it's just you can't even if the subject matter is something you're interested in, the people are interesting, but if the quality sucks, and it's not even worth time.
People want a lot of shit for something that's a free fucking show.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, that's the biggest thing to
That's
me is
funny.
that, like, you'll get so much. I know so many podcasters that get criticisms. I really don't get that much criticism, mostly
Mhm.
because I just deleted any notification to be able to see where that stuff pops up. Um, I mean, I think I've admit more times than not that I'm not the smartest person in the world. Like, I'm not trying to come off like that at all, but
Mhm.
people, they'll skip to the best parts that they want to hear. People just want best ofs, man. And that's the thing
That's
with
hard.
attention spans. We talk about
Mhm.
people losing some aspects of attention spans, man. They're getting shot to shit.
Yeah. You don't do clips of your show though on YouTube, do you?
Nope, but I've seen
Yeah.
all of yours in every single episode, so I'm wondering why you haven't seen any of mine.
I have, but I actually listen to you in my car.
That's
So,
creepy.
yeah.
Like when I
Yeah.
get in, is it just me ranting about the political elites for like
Well, it's cool. I got my my midlife crisis car. It's actually a older model Tesla, but the screen, like on the dash, it has your logo sitting on my dash. It's pretty cool.
that's
So
dope.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty neat. But yeah, I like to post clips of our show. And in fact, when I'm doing the edits, the
You
first
got to
edit
add
is
comments though, because I commented on your thing and it never went up, and it was probably on
oh
your set.
really?
Yeah, on
I
your
think I
settings. Well, on your settings on your video, it'll say
mm-hmm.
like disable all comments, or it'll say hold all comments. You probably have it on hold,
Mm,
so mine's sitting there waiting to go up because it's got to be
I'll have to
accepted by you.
I'll have to look at that because I did respond to one of your comments, and thank you for commenting.
I always watch every single clip that goes up.
Well, thank you.
That's
Oh,
all I do in my
you're
free time
quickly
is
becoming my favorite fan.
all I do in my free time is support all the people that I like to listen to
That's
shows that I'm
funny.
subscribed to.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, I do like doing the clips because I get a in some cases I get to condense some of the the best of the show. Other times I'm too busy and I don't have time to do that type of editing, and so I'll just grab a segment and post the segment. But for me originally it was like I just want it to be able to entice someone to listening to the full show because there's so much more in the full show that may be something that maybe there's a nugget of goodness in there and they're gonna miss out, but I can't post like 5 clips and then all the clips put together as the show. That would be a waste for me. But I do like doing the smaller clips, and sometimes the short versions of it are more entertaining. And
We need to get Dave on this show,
yeah,
and then I want to have you both on.
I think I want to so we are in the process. In fact, Saturday we are moving the studio, and I'm gonna double check the internet connection, and if it's got a good enough connection, then we'll be able to do a show from the studio.
Yeah, we can do a double, so
Hmm.
I can just zoom you both. I
Yeah.
see. I've done that already, but I do like prefer having him on separate first, just so I
Hmm.
can know him, so I don't
Hmm.
feel like I'm leaving him out of the conversation. I had one with my buddy who owns a libservative podcast,
Hmm.
and it was both of them, and it was. I mean, it was fun still, but it was just like I don't know the other person, so it's like trying to like yeah say this, and then he didn't know when to jump in case he was gonna like offend me, and I'm like I don't get offended, and then it's just like back and forth, and it's just like man, good stepping out and trying something new in that aspect. I'm trying because I'm really pissed off about how every single platform that could be used for a healthy discussion is being turned into like a debate. Like the debates is a fucking
Yeah.
entertainment thing. So I want to have like some like Avi Loeb and then Michael Shermer together and have them a
Hmm.
skeptic and someone who believes in the alien thing. So it's like I want to have them talk and then me cut in and be like, hey, don't trample over his sentence, let him get his sentence through. But I want to do that with a lot more of my friends. So I have a conspiracy buddy of mine, Brandon. I'm trying to find someone who doesn't really go with the conspiracy narrative, not to make a debate, but a
Hmm.
healthy discussion and find a common ground in a lot of these things. I think that's what people like to hear and people need more of, not just people shouting at each other back and forth. That might be entertaining, but do you want to see society go even more towards a spiral of drooling all over yourself? Like it's not, it's that type of entertainment.
Well, and then your role becomes more difficult because then you have to, monitor the pace. You got to, regulate the talking over. You got to spur on conversation when it starts to die. I mean, it's harder to do when you've got other folks that are also on there. It's different in a room where you can kind of hear someone, but when it's everyone's in a microphone, it's
That's why
like,
I got a mute button.
yeah, well, there you go.
That's
There
why if
you
someone
go.
starts trying to talk over someone, you just hit the mute button and be like, hey,
Hmm.
let's remember the rules of everything. I think I'm willing to add that extra work to my thing to get like a healthy discourse going between people.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that'd be good. I mean, you've been doing this for such a long time. I mean, you're a good conversationalist. So add a
Trying.
couple more people, and you up your skills.
Got the new lights in the background. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do. I do like the new little look of your show.
Thank you.
Yeah. Although it's the same, blanket thing on your back, though, isn't
Yeah, no, I need a new chair.
it?
I'm gonna probably change the color. I have like 10 of these blankets. I'm gonna change the
Mhm.
color of the blanket.
That's funny. I got one that's blue and I got one that's red.
I got blue, red, orange, black, gray, white,
Mhm.
green, purple.
Wow, you've got a lot.
I keep finding them I don't know who fucking brings them in my
Yeah.
house, but there's billions of them. I'm like, are these things just fucking? They're molting. They're
I got
spawning each other.
I got the two from Mexico when I was a kid. We were tourists, and you had people coming out and selling, the little kids selling you gum, and then they pull you over to this other store, and they start selling you other, trinkets and whatnot. And of course, we got suckered into some blankets, so I still
I
got
wouldn't
them.
call them suckered, and they're not comfortable to sleep in,
No,
but
they're
they're
not.
comfortable for decoration.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, it's like scratchy, like wool, and it's not functional, but it does look cool.
Wow, what privilege you have to be comfortable while you
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah. No kidding, huh?
Um, Scott, where can people find you, brother man? I know you got guests coming in soon.
Yeah, so nevertooserious.com. You can see, our podcast platforms from there. You can find us on YouTube and Rumble, and like we were talking about on Spotify, you can catch the video version of our show.
And all the links will be in the description. And thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for another episode of the podcast.